Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name is Sean Wassercrew. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. We are back. Man, I feel like we've been on a lot lately. We've had a lot of videos come out this week, whether it be my reviews or our mid-year and Weekend Crusaders episodes. We've done a lot of shooting this week, and it is not going to get any lighter, especially with the 2 reviews coming out in the next 2 days. But we are here to talk about the weekend in movies. We're picking 5 movies that come out between July 9th, July 11th. I would say this week and next week. I remember saying last week it was like the 4th of July movies didn't really feel like 4th of July movies. I would say like this week and next week feels more like the 4th of July film. So would you agree?
A little bit. I think it's the kind of thing where theaters, you'd think 4th of July, holidays would be big at the movie theaters, but more and more every time you hear like box office analysts talking about how the actual 4th of July and the days around it actually end up being very slow. So I think they withhold some of those movies. They either put them out the week before or the week after. So yeah. I
would definitely say next week definitely feels like a 4th of July.
There's definitely some bigger movies in there.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have some great movies here today as well, and then we've got some weird movies as well. Because Brian loves picking some weird ass films, and we're definitely gonna be talking about that.
Good movies. I picked the good ones.
Okay, I think if we all go back to literally the thing we just shot, the half-year review, we know that that's not true.
Rockadoodle. Excuse me, sorry. Go ahead.
That's one. That's one to your 5, okay? And the one that we're talking about today will be 6. But anyway, we're gonna open up the show on a somber special note. We did not plan this. We really, really did not plan this. This just weirdly, creepily happened.
Sean did it, just so you know.
Yeah. Thanks. We're talking about our revisited film, and it is Lethal Weapon 4. Lethal Weapon 4 came out July 10th, 1998, had a budget of $140 million, had a weekend box office of $34 million. It was number 1 its opening weekend, its only week at number 1, and had a finished box office of $285.44 million, $130.44 million domestic, and $155 million international. We've had this planned for a few months now that we were going to talk about Lethal Weapon 4 this week. And then it was creepy because what I say the creepy part is I was 5 minutes into watching Lethal Weapon 4 when the news broke that Richard Donner died. And so Brian goes, well, I guess it's perfect that we're talking about Lethal Weapon 4 this week because it lines up perfectly. And I was like, yeah, that wasn't planned, but yeah. And then of course, I totally butchered Superman 2 a couple weeks back, but that was not the Donner cut. So everything's okay. But but we've spent a lot of time on Lethal Weapon on this show, whether it be the first film or the spoof, Loaded Weapon Part 1. We've talked at length about the Lethal Weapon films. And you and I both agreed, Brian, that Lethal Weapon 4, I think, gets criticized pretty harshly, and we both don't hate this film. I actually am very fond of Lethal Weapon 4. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I mean, I honestly, I think it probably is the weakest of the 4 in my opinion, but that doesn't mean anything because I like all 4 of them. My thing with this movie is I really enjoyed the interpersonal relationships between all the characters and the kind of the banter and that kind of thing. The actual main plot of the movie that's driving the movie didn't care that much about, and there are things about it like Chris Rock, who I hated in this movie, and I hate in most movies, honestly. But despite those negatives, I still really, really like this movie a lot. It is my least favorite of the 4, I think, but not by much, and that doesn't mean it's still a high-rated movie. So,
see, when I think back to the Lethal Weapon franchise, the ones that I always think about is the first one and this one. I remember the end of 2, and I remember basically Rene Russo and Mel Gibson and Pesci in the third one. The rest of the plot, off the top of the head, I couldn't tell you. But I remember 4 and I remember 1 verbatim. And I think maybe 4 was because that was, 98 was really when I was kind of coming into my own when watching movies kind of on my own. Instead of, being that kid who sat in the living room and watched whatever his parents were watching kind of thing. And then, of course, Lethal Weapon 1 was just always on TV. But I mean, I know you didn't like Chris Rock in this. I actually like Chris Rock in this one. I think It's not every moment because he goes over the top because he's doing his Chris Rock isms in the film. But there are some moments like the dentist office scene that I think works really well, or when he's messing with Pesci when they're pulled over on the street. I think that's a great, Chris Rock moment. But to me, why I like this one, or think of this one more fondly, and I told you this the other day, is that this is the one where I really felt that Danny Glover and Mel Gibson are just having fun. And they just are out there looking like, hey, this is probably our last time together. Let's just go out there and just enjoy ourselves. And especially Mel Gibson. Because Mel Gibson's usually always playing like super serious, but then he also like will just kind of go crazy with woo kind of thing. But in this one, there's so many moments where you catch him off, like if he's not the main focal point, and you watch like behind everyone else, you see Mel's cracking up. And they like there's a few times where you catch Mel like kind of laughing, and he just looks like he's just having a blast. Like he's just happy to be there. And
yeah, I mean, I've always felt that way. I honestly miss Mel Gibson. I miss happy, fun Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
I know it's not PC to be in support of him, but I really do miss him. I hope that he is able to make a comeback, and he's come back in smaller films, and they're always more like gritty kind of grungy films, very serious roles for him. But back in the day when he was doing this, when he was doing Maverick, when he was doing I'm trying to think about the ones around the same time, like the Bird on a Wire and Air America, even those kind of films. He was just having tons of fun, and you can tell like he's not like, I won't say an improv kind of guy, but you can tell he's kind of, his reactions to a lot of that stuff is just very natural. And like you said, when he's like just trying not to crack up, or he's cracking other people up, and it's tons of fun. And I kind of miss that Mel Gibson.
Like one of my favorite gags in the movie is the newspaper article where from the opening scene.
Stop doing this.
Yeah, he's got feelings, kind of thing. I wish we got at least one more of that in the episode, like later in the film, that like he's still doing it kind of thing. But like that, and then like the one moment, which I know you hate the scene, but I love the outcome of it, where Pesci and Chris Rock are arguing about the cell phones, and then Mel Gibson gets on the phone, literally go, "Shut the fuck up, get the hell out of here!" Like that moment right there. It's like I love Mel Gibson in this movie. I don't like how they constantly keep teasing that he's too old now to do things, and I get that that's because they're trying to end the franchise in a way, but it's like Mel Gibson still did like The Patriot and shit after this movie. It's like he's not too old to do any of the stuff, but like the character of Riggs, they were trying to make too old to do certain things. But another part that I also really liked about this film is this the first time I think I'd ever seen Jet Li was in this movie. This was my introduction to Jet Li, and Jet Li is awesome in this film. I think he you don't agree? I see your face.
Here's my problem. Is this was kind of most people in the U.S. their first introduction to Jet Li. My problem with Jet Li coming to America was the same problem I had with like Jackie Chan when he came to America, or some of these other, Donnie Yen when he came to America, is that they've made all these great martial arts films, and then by the time they actually get famous enough where they decide to try and bring them into Hollywood and make movies there, they're kind of already a little past their prime. And Jet Li here, while I still thought he was good, he wasn't nearly as impressive as in some of his earlier films, things like that. And I thought he was kind of underused. I mean, he's really only gets to show off his martial arts in 2, maybe 3 scenes in this movie. And even then I was kind of like, it's kind of cool, but it was just like, it felt like they tried to make a bigger deal of it than it was. And I wasn't as impressed as I thought I would be by him. But I mean, I still liked him. I just think part of that goes, like you said, to the whole kind of the storyline. But honestly, with all the Lethal Weapon movies, you don't really care about the plot of the case they're trying to solve or whatever it is. But
no, I didn't give a crap about the Hogs, or I didn't care about the family or anything like that, or the how it became about smuggling. But then by the end of the movie, it was all about them like faking bills and stuff like that. I was like, oh, that was a shift to do this kind of thing. But no, what I liked about it, and like I said, Jet Li was great in that moment, is with this film. Usually when you see a lot of movies where the bad guys know martial arts and the villains and the heroes aren't martial artists, they all of a sudden just start doing martial arts back. It's like, when the hell did these characters learn martial arts? You know, because like they haven't ever fought like that way before. But in this movie, what I liked about it was that you had the clashes of that. You had the martial arts, villains, and then you had basically, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson who just punch. Like they don't kick, they don't do anything like that. Like they'll headbutt or something. But it's like the clashing of the fights, which is why they were constantly always at the back end of getting their asses kicked, because they weren't used to fighting people who knew martial arts. Even though I'm pretty sure Mel Gibson had some martial arts fighting in the first film. He must have forgotten it.
Well, it's more that he knows some martial arts just from his special forces training, but it's not necessarily those intricate martial arts like Jet Li's doing.
Well, I mean, but like in the first film, I remember him doing like a spinning back kick at one point in the first film, like Busey on the lawn. But like here, it's like he doesn't kick once. But
I did enjoy watching them getting their asses kicked by Jet Li. You know what it reminded me of, and obviously this came way before the other one I'm talking about. But I want to say it's Fast and Furious 6. When Roman and Han are chasing that one guy, and then he just like that one Asian dude just like completely kicks their asses, and because he's like doing his martial arts, and they're just getting their asses kicked, and at the end of the fight, there's like laying there all beat up, like we don't say what about this to anybody. And I kind of felt like the same way watching this, because like there's Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, like the heroes of the movie, and they're getting their asses kicked by this like little wiry guy that's jumping all over the place and kicking their ass.
Well, yeah, like that's what I liked about the one part, like at the end when we get the inevitable end scene where they're fighting on like the dock, where it's like they're both going, they both know they're about to get their ass kicked because they just pissed off Jet Li. They're all just like, shit, like here we go, and they're getting their butts kicked, and they both finally were just like, let's just catch him and throw him. It's like it's such like a.
That was a cool scene. It's not shot when they got him, just threw him down.
Just catch him, and you can throw him. You're both bigger than him, And it's just like it's just like the little moments like that, or like when he's fighting the one bad guy in like the Build-A-House on the interstate. Mm-hmm. Like I love that whole scene is choreographed great from him getting into the house and then busting through the window and pulling him through the front door to them fighting off, then him laying on the table and then throwing the leg. Like everything about that highway chase I thought was great. I thought it was beautifully choreographed, and just the ideas they came up with to make it unique I think worked really, really well. And then like the dock scene was especially brutal, especially like near the end, what they did with Jet Li at the end of it. I thought it was like, wow, they really like the one part with the what do you call it? It's not an iron, but the metal. It's not a spear, but I'm blanking
on the rebar.
Thank you, the rebar. I was like, what the hell is it called? And like he picks Jet Li up with it. You're like, oh, right. Like the brutalness of it. Like I loved it. I didn't really care for them teasing like they were gonna kill Mel Gibson at the end. It's like, you're not gonna kill Mel. Like, shut up. Like he's not gonna die in this movie. But no, like and the other thing too is like how they try to treat Pesci like he was an angel at the end of the movie. Like he was a guardian angel kind of thing, which I'm like, we don't need to give Joe Pesci that kind of character change. But
no, I don't think they were actually trying to say he's an angel.
Oh no, they totally were, because yes they were because they go in the cemetery and he does the whole story about the frog, which to me was a great scene by Joe Pesci.
Right.
Great scene. And then, Mel does the whole like, wow, you really sent me a weird angel, but I got to go. And then as soon as he gets him to the hospital, he tells Pesci, you're good. You can go now. Like your time, like go help. He's basically like saying goodbye to him. Like you've done what you needed to do. You can go. Like as an angel.
You read way too far into that scene.
No, it's not. No, it is not.
Absolutely. They were not implying he was really an angel. He was saying instead of weird angel, that's just
because even Pesci was like, okay.
That's just a figure of speech. And then when he's there, he's trying to like still be involved. He's like, I've got it from here. You can go now.
No, but
you read way too far. No, we're moving on. You read way too far into that.
No, I'm not, because even after the door closes, he's like, all right, well, good luck, Riggs. Good luck. Like he was going to leave. And then Mel comes back and goes, no, stay. Kind of thing. Like, no, that was
nothing to do with being an angel. That was just being Joe Pesci.
No, that was all playing into an angel.
It was just Leo. Okay.
So
we'll let the viewers decide how crazy you are anyway.
Okay. But that's not crazy. Literally, you're playing that whole way through. Nonetheless.
Not at all. That's the most ridiculous thing you've said in 6 months of the show.
Not a ridiculous thing.
Okay.
So is you thinking that the freaking score in Ravenous is good. So don't even come at me with that. But Lethal Weapon 4, though. Great opening with the guy on fire, the flamethrower guy. Great opening. I thought that was fun. I do think they were a little too screamy for the first like 20 minutes. Like everything's like them just yelling at each other, like antics. But then it finally starts to slow down, and then we kind of get into like an actual Lethal Weapon film. But I enjoy Lethal Weapon 4 for the most part. I think back to Lethal Weapon 4 is like fondly. And then, of course, the end like credits, we get the kind of like the whole like they clearly were closing up the franchise with all like the picture frame kind of thing. But yeah, I enjoy Lethal Weapon 4.
Yeah, the ending of that, obviously they had the birth of his daughter, all that kind of stuff. But then when they took the group picture and everything, I thought this is a great closing to the whole saga. It ends with kind of the whole family and extended family of them, and apparently an angel. And but then when they did the closing credits, they had like all the pictures of even like behind the scenes stuff like that. I thought that was a perfect way to end it. So.
I don't have a perfect way to end it, but just watching it right now, especially after what happened with him passing away and then seeing those photos, like it hit harder, on that. So for anyone who has, let's put it this way, if you've watched Lethal Weapon, you probably have seen Lethal Weapon 4. Let's be real here. But for anyone who has not seen the Lethal Weapon franchise, like there are some people who have not seen Lethal Weapon, and that shocks me. But yeah, you definitely should be checking it out. But I mean, obviously watch from the first one all the way to the 4. Don't just start with 4. But they're all on HBO Max, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, if you guys want an action-packed weekend, watch all 4. Have fun. Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, Joe Pesci, Rene Russo, all of them. You definitely will have fun watching those. We're going to go on now to my pick. This movie, I remember seeing the first one of these. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Like it was good, not great. And then this sequel came out, and I was blown away with how good this film was. This was my number 1 film of 2014 when it came out, and then its predecessor, in I think it was 2017. I think was my number 1 of the year that year as well. And we are talking about my pick, which is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out July 11th, 2014, had a budget of $170 million, had a weekend opening of $72.6 million. Number 1, its opening weekend, spent 2 weeks at the number 1 spot, and had a finished box office of $710.64 million, $208.54 million domestic, and $502.09 million international. Yeah, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is one of those when you watch this trilogy, this is where that argument comes into play of how the Oscars have not given mocap people their chance. I mean, see, everyone talks about the stunt doubles, which I agree. Stunts should be getting Oscar nominations, but mocap acting also deserves their spot and their place in the spotlight when it comes to the Oscars, because Andy Serkis as Caesar is a magnificent performance. I mean, he's magnificent as Smeagol. He's my favorite character of Lord of the Rings as Smeagol. Serkis' performance in that, and his performance of Caesar from the first film all the way to the final film is a top tier class. He makes you believe that these are real gorillas. There's not really a moment in this film where I was like, I'm watching, CG gorillas. Like, if they do a phenomenal job of making everything about this believable. The story is fantastic. You got a great human cast with Kerry Russell, Gary Oldman. Help me on the big main guy. I'm blanking on his name real quick.
Jason Clarke?
Yes, thank you, Jason Clarke. I always want to say it's I always get Jason Clarke and Edgerton.
Joel Edgerton?
Joel Edgerton. I always get Joel Edgerton and Jason Clarke like across. But the cast is great. We got some great action sequences. I mean, come on, monkeys riding horses, shooting machine guns, double barrel.
Even before the movie came out, I saw that poster with the monkey on the horseback. I'm like, yes.
Yes, it's so great. And then we get the skyscraper battle sequence in the third act. And then as even a true sequel, we go back to the first film at one point in this. It would be a beautiful little moment for Caesar in there as well. love this film. I feel like it's almost a near perfect film for me, especially when it comes to sci-fi films. It's one of the best films in the 2010s for me personally. I know you're not as high on it as I am, but what are your thoughts on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
Actually, I really love Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Actually, when I went back and rewatched it, like I think it was last year, I think I actually bumped my rating up even higher. It's like a 4.5 stars. It's just like, not quite a perfect 5, but it's like right on the cusp there because it's really so well done. I mean, the story and everything's well done, but like you said, the acting of everyone, the humans and the apes alike, is phenomenal. And what they've done with the digital stuff, it's like, yes, you had like Gollum in that, which is a complete CGI character based on mocap, but even then he looked like a CGI character. I mean, he looked real in the environment, but you could tell he was fake. But here, I didn't doubt for a minute, like, wow, how they teach apes to act. It's just like it's done that well. And I agree that mocap, I think, is needs to be more recognized. I understand the difficulties with it because it becomes a matter of, well, how much do they alter that from what they've filmed to what finally comes out? But even then, it's the voice acting is still complete. It's I don't think that much different than enhancing a performance with makeup, or even in the case of something like The Irishman, you enhance their performances with CGI. So it's like, where are you going to draw that line? So I do think they need to figure out a way to recognize this because, like you said, and not just Andy Serkis, but everyone in the cast. Toby Kebbell, especially, because Koba, I think, is one of my favorite characters. I mean, not like I'm cheering for him, but one of my favorite characters in the movie, in this franchise.
Beautiful character in the film.
Yeah, because I mean, it starts out. I mean, because first of all, you understand where he comes from because he was, abused and when he was, in captivity, and then the beginning of the movie, he kind of has those moments with Koba's son, and it's like he's not necessarily a bad guy so much as he's just has a different philosophy of where they stand with the humans. And it's not until towards the end of the movie where he just becomes like, I'm just going against everything and I'm, I'll kill Caesar if I have to do it. But I really think he's one of my favorite characters, especially my favorite scenes in this movie are the ones where he goes like the guys are testing guns. He's like acts like he's like some goofy like scene. He acts like this goofy like orangutan or something, goofing around playing around. And stuff. And then he comes back and does the same thing, just guns them all down. It's like, and then that's kind of the moment where he just turns really dark. And so I really like that. But yeah, but it's those kind of scenes where you believe the apes, you believe their emotions, you believe their characters, you believe their motivations, and so it's really well done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good apes film because like obviously with the old apes films, everyone, it was humans in gorilla costume or monkey costumes. And, they had their own vocal voices and stuff like that, and their own characters. In this, I mean, for the most part, it's really just Caesar with the vocals. Koba speaks a little bit. But you're doing a good job of establishing characters when that's Blue Eyes, that's Rocket, that's Maurice. Like, these gorillas' names, and they don't talk in the film, but you know who they are. And they each one just has their own specific identity and characters. So like when certain ones of them pass away, especially when we get more into the third film, stuff like that you feel that you resonate with those characters, and they're just CG gorillas and monkeys and stuff, but they do such a great job. I think is it Judy Greer that plays Maurice? No, she plays Cornelia.
No, I don't remember the woman's name that plays Maurice, but there's a woman.
Karen Konoval plays Maurice, but yeah, the cast is great. Of course, I love Kerry Russell. So anytime Kerry Russell's on screen, I'm all for that. And then Gary Oldman is Gary Oldman. I mean, how can you not love Gary Oldman in the film? But I love the human cast. I love the ape cast. It's a beautiful story, and it's one of those where for anyone who, like I said, because in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it's fine. I don't love it, and a lot of that's because they basically casted I'm blanking on his name, Malfoy.
Tom something.
Tom Felton.
Yes. And
he's basically playing Malfoy in the fucking movie.
Kind of, yeah.
And it's just like, and it's cringy when he says, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape." Just like, don't say you haven't earned that line, But it's like it's got a great, third act battle, but the whole film itself, like, it's fine. It's not great, but I could see how some people might have given up on the franchise. after that first movie. But the second film, Dawn, that we're talking about now, and War, to me, are near perfect films.
Oh, see, I don't feel that at all, because I think that people have like a nostalgia for the first Planet of the Apes. The ones right after that were pretty garbage, and most people agree on those.
Tim Burton.
Well, I'm talking about the one forwards. Then
Okay.
they saw Burton's. Oh, he's going to bring it back. We liked that first one. Let's watch this one. That one was widely panned, rightfully so. But I think Rise came out, and I don't think it soured people. I thought they were soured on the franchise. I think it restored their faith in the franchise. Now, it was not nearly as good. I agree. It's a big jump in quality from Rise to Dawn. But I think Rise did a great job saying, look, this is what we can do with the series. This is where we're going with the series, and did a great job setting it up. Now they got to get into the meat of it with Dawn, whereas Rise just kind of had to establish the characters and stuff, set up pieces. So by the time you hit Dawn, you didn't have to cover all that, and it just went full into the story, and they did a perfect job of it.
Yeah, it's like I said, Dawn is one of my favorite films, as well as War. I love War as well, and if War was lined up with our shows, I would probably be talking about War or the Planet of the Apes as well, but it doesn't. But yeah, if you guys had never seen, let's just say the New Planets trilogy, the New Apes trilogy, definitely go out of your way to watch this, especially installments 2 and 3. You do need to watch the first one to establish Caesar as a character, because you need.
I think the first one is still a very good movie.
It is. Like I said, I don't hate it. It's just when it's like one of those things, like you watch the first one and then you watch War and Dawn. It's like it's such a far difference in almost overall story and quality. It's same director and everything. I believe it's Matthew Reeves does all 3, right?
No, the first one was Rupert Wyatt.
Like I said, different director. So like that's probably why.
But the second 2 were Matt Reeves. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, Andy Serkis. If I didn't appreciate the hell out of him out of Lord of the Rings, it is hard not to appreciate Andy Serkis as a performer outside of this film, and eventually with the other 2 films as well. His performance as Caesar is, to be, one of the better performances of the 2010s, and it deserves to be praised. It deserves to be recognized, as well as Toby Kebbell as Koba, and it's the rest of the apes as well. But those 2, Toby Kebbell gets no recognition. Toby Kebbell's got some other great mocap performances as well in other films, and he doesn't get any recognition as well either. I think a lot of people just know him as like, oh, he's the crappy Dr. Doom from Fantastic Four stick. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, Toby's actually a really good actor. He did one really bad film, and like no one will let it go.
Like Kong Skull Island. I think there are people there are people that don't like Kong Skull Island maybe as much as I do. I enjoy the movie quite a bit, but there's no doubt that I think that Kong in that is, to me, as good, probably better than the one that Andy Serkis did in King Kong. But that's just my opinion. As far as the mocap, that could just be the technology in 10 years difference, but I don't know.
I love Peter Jackson's Kong, and Andy Serkis did exactly what he did. He made me believe in Kong in that film. I don't think it's on the same level as Caesar, obviously, but he did his job. He made me care about Kong when Kong passed in 2005's Kong. So Kebbell did Kong and Skull Island?
Yeah.
Okay, he did a great job there too. Like that, when I have my issues with Kong Skull Island, and it is not the portrayal of Kong. It's not. It's the story. But Kong was great in that, which obviously I did not know Toby did. But yeah, the cast in this film is great. You guys should really check this one out. But I would say watch all 3, just like we say with Lethal Weapon. Watch all 4 Lethal Weapons. Watch all 3 Planet of the Apes.
Give you a lot of homework this week, folks.
We have a lot of homework, but
we're not done with franchises.
It's good homework. It's fantastic homework. Dawn, or even the trilogy itself, is it on it?
I didn't check the other ones, but Dawn is currently not anywhere for free.
Yeah, I'm assuming if Dawn isn't, the other 2 probably aren't.
Probably not.
Well, but they are definitely worth a rental. We are now going to go to our stinker film. This was a movie that I think Brian and I were both kind of like, oh, fuck, let's just get this over with. So last week we talked about the movie Inner Space, about a guy being shrunken down and going into the body of another person. This movie is not necessarily the same, but it's kind of in that same wavelength. And we are talking about the Eddie Murphy comedy Meet Dave. Meet Dave came out July 11th, 2008, had a budget of $60 million, had a weekend opening of $5.25 million. Number 7, its opening weekend behind Hellboy 2, The Golden Army in its first week, Hancock in its second week, Journey to the Center of the Earth in its first week, Wall-E in its third week, Wanted in its third week, and Get Smart in its fourth week. Had a finished box office of $51.3 million, $11.8 million domestic, and $39.53 million international. Brian, why don't you start with Meet Dave?
Yeah, so Meet Dave is a movie I really didn't know a whole lot about. It just has this bad reputation as being just one of those horrible Eddie Murphy movies you hear about. Basically, it's this spaceship lands on Earth. The spaceship happens to be, for whatever reason, shaped like Eddie Murphy, which is also the character, the captain of the ship is Eddie Murphy. So apparently they make their ships look like them. I don't know. I assume it was just they designed it like that so he could infiltrate, the human race and Earth, whatever. I don't know. Yeah. So basically you have Eddie Murphy, Gabrielle Union, Ed Helms, all these people that are, people that are inside the spacecraft, inside the body, and they have a person that operates the right arm and left leg and left leg. And we contemplate on other parts that they might have had to operate, but we won't go into that.
Well, it's one of those things that it's hard not to watch this movie, because when certain things happen in the film, you're like, well, it's hard. We're adults. It's hard not to go sexual with it. So what happens if this happens? We're going to stop right there with that. But it's hard not to watch that movie and not think, what happens with this? Where to go wrong?
So basically, the plot is that they're on Earth, they're looking for this rock, basically that got lost there before the ship followed it there, which they can use to basically take over the planet. It's one of those movies. It's like it's meant to be a family film, I guess, because it's rated PG. Obviously, there's not really any kind of innuendo humor. There might be a couple of things hinted at, but not any dirty humor or anything like that. But it's one of those. It's not overtly a family film. So I think that's the problem. It had trouble finding an audience because your normal Eddie Murphy crowd wasn't going to rush out to see this, but kids weren't like, ooh, I have to go see Meet Dave, So it's kind of in the in between area. But this is also in that area of Eddie Murphy where it's he kind of was really big through the 80s and 90s. And then in the 2000s, he started doing kids' movies. We talked about this last week, Boomerang. He started doing kids' movies and remakes of kids' movies and sequels to remakes of kids' movies. But he did manage to put out a few original things. There was, Showtime, Bowfinger especially. There's a lot of Bowfinger in this movie, actually, in the way Eddie Murphy acts.
There's one particular character. Every time he interacts with them, he does the kind of. There's that's the Bowfinger smile.
He does his Bowfinger face and his voice too. But so there are definitely moments where you kind of see that old Eddie Murphy. But from a lot of the movie, especially in its character that's inside the ship, he's using this weird. It's not quite a British accent, but some kind of weird accent he chose to use.
I would say it's more like he's just trying to sound prestigious because he's the captain.
Yeah, it was just kind of an odd choice. Yeah. But this movie, I think Sean feels the same way. We started watching it, went in there going, oh God, we got to watch this movie. First couple minutes, I'm already chuckling a couple times. And once I got into the movie, I'm like, I don't love this movie, but it's not awful. I mean, it's serviceable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the cast. Because like I said, we got Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy's going to be Eddie Murphy. And then you've got Gabrielle Union, who we like. We got Ed Helms, who we like for the most part. I think he's probably one of the weaker parts in the film is Ed Helms. We got Elizabeth Banks, who is, I think, solid in the film. Even though I did mention that she has probably one of the best kind of laugh things, almost like ditzy, but not really ditzy. She does that in 40-Year-Old Virgin, and here she does the same thing where she's like I don't know how to react, kind of laugh, kind of thing.
There were several scenes this way where she was kind of channeling her 40-Year-Old Virgin kind of acting.
Exactly. And we're just she does kind of laugh a little too much.
Just like Scott Conn was in here as a cop, and there was a couple scenes in particular where Scott Conn was doing his best impression of his dad. This is James Conn was
There's he does it, and Brian's like, pause. I'm like, okay. He's like, that's a total James Conn moment. He's totally channeling his dad on this.
Yeah.
All right.
Totally, because I just recently watched Way of the Gun, and especially in that movie, because Way of the Gun, I think something was wrong with it. I think he actually has had something wrong with his neck where he kind of turns like this all the time. But Scott Conn was kind of doing that same gesture and the way he talked. It was just perfect James Conn moment. The most surprising person in here.
I was going to bring him up.
Go ahead.
This most surprising character, or to me, the MVP of this movie, that we were like we were watching, was like, who is this?
I don't know if I go MVP, but okay.
No, to me he was the best part of the movie.
Okay.
Is Pat Kilbane.
Oh, that's not where I was going, but okay.
Oh, that's not where we were going?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Pat Kilbane, he plays number 4, the security guard, who once landed on Earth really kind of figures out who he is as a person. Yes. He really figures himself out, and I think he's got some of the best laughs in the movie. I think he works really well in this role, because I think you and I were like, who is this guy? Because like he looks familiar, but he doesn't at the same time. And I really enjoyed his performance in this film. He was the one that, like, whenever he was front and center on screen, I was actually more like interested, because I was like, I'm intrigued on what he's gonna say and what he's gonna do. And like,
he starts off with just kind of background, officer number 3,
guy.
And you ignore him, and then it's like, and then he gets this thing where clearly, like, basically kind of literally at one point in the closet, kind of, discovering who he is, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna go here with this. I mean, it's not that I care, but it's just like in this kids movie, I'm like, how are they gonna handle this? And he starts to get more flamboyant and stuff. And at one point, he gets the full haircut, and the tight. It's typical like village people dressing, basically. And it actually turned out to be one of the funnier characters for a while. Then in one scene, suddenly after this Crimson Tide-ish uprising, all of a sudden he's back in his regular uniform. His haircut has somehow grown back into the same old haircut he used to have.
Yeah, he's like the military buzz cut, and then like he goes back to like the flock of seagulls kind of haircut.
And then it's back to that again.
Exactly. So but for some reason it works. It works in this movie. Who are we talking about? The other person? Because I was
talking about Kevin Hart.
Yeah, I was going to say Kevin Hart.
I didn't realize it was in this movie. And then when I saw it wasn't, I'm like, wow, is he really doing much then? Because he'd done kind of bit parts, but he didn't kind of break into lead roles until after this movie. But he was actually had a bigger role in this movie than I thought he would. And it was a lot of it's kind of very slapsticky humor. But I was just like, I was surprised to see him in this, and surprised at how much they used him. But he was kind of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think this is almost like he's in it because he's friends with Eddie Murphy in real life. Because like his character is not like an important character, but then I think they realize like, oh, this guy's funny. Let's use him more. Because I don't think he ever has an actual name in the film. I think he's just like, does he have an actual name in the movie?
He's credited as number 17.
Number 17. So no, he has no name in the movie. He's number 17. But
they basically used him as like the slapsticky moments, because like he's like in the mouth when they start doing the hot dog eating contest and things like that.
Yeah. So and it's like it's one of those. It's like I think honestly he broke out, like Kevin Hart broke out as an actor. I think within the next year or two with what was it? I think Like a Man or something like that.
That, and also his stand-ups became huge that time, and that led to him then getting lead roles in like Ride Along and things like that, and it went from there. So
yeah, but I mean, I think this is one of those stinkers that like Brian and I were watching, and we were like halfway through it. I'm like, this isn't bad. Like, it's not great.
But we went in fully expecting to hate this movie.
No, we were like, oh, let's just get this over with. And like it started, and when like initially like when you first see Eddie Murphy crash land, and it's like him just like face plant into the ground, and we're just like, oh god, this is gonna be bad. And then like him first acting in the beginning where he's trying to figure out how to move like a human, it's like, oh, this is gonna be horrible. And then once he starts to kind of like act like a person for the most part, it finds this weird kind of groove.
Yeah.
And it just kind of stays in this zone. And like there's little peaks where it's funny, and there's this little parts where it's like, well, that didn't really work, but it doesn't break the film by any means. It's just like, well, that joke didn't land. But you have all these other modes where it's like, okay, this is working for the most part for what this film is. And by the end of the movie, you're just like, all right. Like
I think you need to go into it if you decide to watch this. And I'm not going to say I recommend you rush out to see it, but I don't think you'll hate it. I think if you go into it knowing what to expect, knowing that it is essentially a family film, so you're not looking for your classic Eddie Murphy kind of thing in this, that I think that, I would say at least tolerable, which sounds bad. That doesn't sound like much of an endorsement of it, but I'm not going to try to tell you it's a great movie. But you could watch worse.
Exactly. If you're wanting to see an Eddie Murphy movie that you probably had not seen before, but you're like, I'm gonna skip this because this looks like shit. It's not. It's fine. Where there's other movies of his where it's like, steer clear. Don't watch that film. That movie's bad. Like Norbert.
Norbit, yeah.
Norbit, yeah, Norbit. Like steer clear of stuff like that. But like Meet Dave really is. It's not that bad. It's one of those where I think what was it, like not. Like last week was Tammy, and we were like, you know what? If they just did a little bit of things here and there differently, this probably wouldn't be that bad of a movie. And then the week prior to that was Love Guru. It was like, this really isn't that bad of a film. Meet Dave's like right there. It's like, this really isn't that much of a stinker. There are probably some other films we probably could have picked that would have been a whole lot worse, but we picked this one based off of the name and based off of what everyone else said. And we watched it, we're just like, this really isn't that bad. It really isn't. But Meet Dave is not on any streaming.
Nope, had to pay to rent that one.
Exactly. We're not really saying go out of your way to watch it by any means. But maybe if you guys were a little hesitant on watching it because of what people said or even the reviews for it, don't let that be your guide. It's really not that bad of a film. But now we're going to go to our featured film. This is another movie that we said last week, kind of like Lethal Weapon 4, that gets kind of shit on. That probably does not deserve the hate that it gets. And that is the sci-fi horror film Predators. Predators came out July 9th, 2010, had a budget of $40 million, had a weekend opening of $24.76 million. Number 3, its opening weekend behind Despicable Me in its first week and the Twilight Saga Eclipse in its second week, and had a finished box office of $127.23 million, $52 million domestic, and $75.23 million international. Now, for me, the Predator franchise, I love the first Predator. I don't hate Predator 2. It's not great, but I don't hate it. And then, not last year, it's like a couple years back, the Predator, I'm not a fan of. And AVPs both suck. Those are two franchises.
I don't even consider those part of the...
No, but they're Predator films, technically. But, I mean, it's one of those movies hurt my heart. I was counting down the days for an AVP film, and those are the two films we got, and that broke me. But Predators, first off, can we talk about the cast in this film? This even the Predator that came out like 3 years ago, that's got a great cast. Predators has a great cast. I mean, literally when I started watching, I was like, is that fucking Mahershala Ali? I
had forgotten. I don't know if I knew who he was at this point. I don't think I did because I rewatched it this time. Like, oh, I forgot he was in this movie.
Like I saw him, I was like, that looks like him. That can't be him. And then I'm like, holy crap, he's in a Predator film. I didn't recognize him.
I'm looking in like Benjamin Button was kind of the first major film he did, and then Predators is pretty much the second major film really that he did. So
yeah, I mean, you got what is with me in names tonight? I'm brain farting on everybody.
If I knew who you were talking about, outside.
I mean, you got Adrian Brody. You've got Topher Grace, which I know a lot of people still shit on Topher Grace for Venom, but I mean, he's literally doing what he's. Danny Trejo, who I was trying to come up with in my head, right? But yeah, Lawrence Fishburne, Walton Goggins, who y'all know I love Walton Goggins so much. Also, I think Louise Ozawa is pretty solid. Oleg Tarktarov and Alice Braga. I mean, this is such a great, like, 9 human cast in a Predator film. We saw more Predators in this film than I think any other Predator film prior, except for maybe the AVP films. We got Predator dogs, but the plot, the actual storyline of this film is unique. I love the concept that they did in this film. I love the ideas that they had in this film. And I think outside of maybe one miscast, but I think that he does well in his role. It's just not the person who I would have thought of for the role. I really enjoyed this film. I like a lot of the ideas that they did. Brian, what are your thoughts on Predators?
I'm kind of coming from the same place as you in that I thought the first Predator obviously is very good. The second one, again, like you, didn't hate it. I'm a bigger fan of The Predator than most people. I think it definitely has its problems, but I actually still enjoy it quite a bit. The AVPs, I honestly do pretend they don't exist, because even the alien continuity has decided they don't exist because it doesn't. Their visits to Earth don't line up in that world either. But so this one is one I was actually very excited about, because Predators was coming out. Robert Rodriguez was gonna he produced it, which, when he's not doing kid stuff, I actually tend to enjoy for the most part his stuff. He does Desperado and Dusk Till Dawn, things like that. I agree on the cast. You know that I tend to like a lot of the movies when they're cast full of like kind of, I don't want to say B-list actors, but not like superstars, not the Tom Cruises and things like that. But a lot of these, like,
they're well known.
These known names a lot of people may not even, because outside of movie communities, they might not know Walton Goggins' name or Alice Braga's name, people like that. But you've seen these people, and I really like everyone in this, with the exception, don't the same one as you. I was not a fan of Adrian Brody being cast.
That's who I was going to talk about. Because the first time he starts to talk in this movie, I was like, is he trying to do Matthew McConaughey? It's like I felt like he was trying to do Matthew McConaughey in the movie. I think he does an admirable job.
I agree.
But Adrian, when I look at a action hero, I don't see Adrian Brody. Dude got shredded for the film, though. Like I said, I commend him for the work he put in to try and do this, but he is just not believable as a badass in this movie.
And obviously that was the kind of thing. You're taking Adrian Brody, this guy who's not known as an action star. I mean, he'd been in King Kong and stuff like that, but he still was he was the writer who got thrown in a situation. He wasn't a badass.
Like, he wasn't like the action hero,
right? So you put him in here where he's clearly supposed to be like, was he supposed to be like a special forces dude or something like that?
That's the thing, is that they never ever really come out clearly and say what he was.
Yeah, but clearly had some kind of training and things. Yeah,
he's clearly like Bob Odenkirk and nobody.
And like Bob Odenkirk, it could be like they didn't want to have they didn't want to go the Arnold Schwarzenegger route of here's the big chiseled superhero.
I mean, they got him for the film. They got him chiseled and shredded for the film.
Well, he was in pretty good shape, but he still wasn't like the big bulky dude. But at the same time, it's like just his voice and stuff. There's things about it. I didn't hate him in the movie. I still think the movie's fine. I think, like you said, he did an admirable job. Still would not have been my choice for the lead role. Topher Grace, I actually usually like Topher Grace. I mean, Venom, we won't talk about that.
It's not his fault. I really don't like him for that.
When this guy does everything from dramas like Traffic to comedies like Take Me Home Tonight or Win a Date with Ted Hamilton, these things like this, I actually very much enjoy Topher Grace. And then the whole supporting cast, like you said, we all love Walton Goggins. Danny Trejo is always solid when he shows up in a movie. Lawrence Fishburne kind of gets to play kind of what he's been doing for years now. He kind of shows up in like small supporting roles in all kinds of movies. Yeah. And he does a great job for what he has. So, I mean, I love the cast they assembled. The action, I think, is solid. I have no problem even with the whole plot of the story of it. I think actually the movie beginning to end, I love the way this movie starts out. I love that it's like, here's the credit, here's the opening logos, and then boom, they're in free fall. It's like, it doesn't give you any lead up. It's just you enter this movie like they do. They wake up falling through the air. And I loved that opening.
I agree. And it's one of those things where the first, I think it's about 40 minutes into the film before we first see a predator in the movie, but we're doing what the movie needed to do at that point. We're in a mysterious area. We have these 8 characters that we don't know anything about. We just know, okay, well, Brody's obviously the main guy because he's the first person we see on screen. Mm-hmm. And we start to learn about each one. We start to kind of build characters out of these characters over the next 40 minutes. And then you have that lingering, like, why is Topher Grace here? Like, he's the one character who doesn't fit. Why is he here? And so you had that kind of lingering mystery. It's like, is he just the bait guy kind of thing? But through those first 40 minutes, we've established that he's the leader, but he's also someone you can't trust. And you've got Alice Braga, who is probably the main leader because she's the one who's going to try to keep everyone alive. And then you've got
she's the one connection to the original film.
Exactly.
She talks about how she was aware of in Guatemala. They talked about when basically the events of the first film, and so they're familiar with this creature.
And that's what I love too. I love that they brought this back around to the original film, because Predator 2 acts like Predator 1 never really existed. Like they don't talk about their things at all. But this movie brings the first Predator back around, talks about that mission, talks about Schwarzenegger's Dutch in the film. And so I like that they brought it back in a sense, because it makes it feel like it's not like a reboot or anything. Like, no, this is the same world. This is the same story, just, down the road kind of thing. And like I said, we get established to I think this is the first time, like I said, I'm not counting the AVPs, where we realize that there are two species of predators. There's the big dogs, and then there's the small dogs. And then like they're at feuds of themselves. And then you got predator dogs and like all this kind of stuff. And then obviously this is the first time I think did we ever see the Predator ships in the first two films? No, we saw the Predator ship in Predator 2, because that was the whole tease, the aliens, because you saw the alien skull. Right. But yeah, I there's so much in this that I like. I don't get why this movie got dogged so hard when it came out.
I think it's a matter of, I know that Adrian Brody got a lot of crap for that, because because I think people want Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? They basically want Predator 1 all over again, which I'd rather they do different things with it. That's why this is one of those franchises like the Alien franchise, things like that, where I like when you have basically the same mythology, but it's like a different director's take on it every time, a different story. You're not the same thing over again, because you got the first one is what it is. The second one, he's in basically modern day in the city. He's like come to America and kicking ass, which, like you said, it was mixed results, but it was still kind of a cool thing.
And it's Danny Glover. Once again, not a built guy. It's Danny Glover.
It was something different, and then this one was something completely different, and then the Predator was something completely different. Now, I didn't like how in this one, and then again in the Predator, where they decided, hey, let's start making one of the Predators a good guy kind of thing. And they kind of started leaning that way, and so I don't like when they kind of get into that.
I mean, they're good. They're good, but they're not really. Like, I feel like by the end, the Predator probably would have killed the humans anyway.
Well, yeah, not really, but I still think it takes away from the this Predator race that are trying to kill them. When you say, oh, well, you know what, some of them might team up with you, will be nice to you, or whatever.
Technically, they started that in AVP though, because in AVP, like they almost got it was like, is the chick gonna fuck the Predator? Kind of thing. Like they almost had like this like relationship kind of deal, and this is like, no, I'm gonna save you, you get me to the ship, and like that's the basis of it kind of thing. Right. But the only part of the movie that to me was real cringe was when Brody quoted Schwarzenegger, where I'm like, don't quote Dutch, like, come on, kill me now. It's like, no, you can't do Dutch, don't do that. Like that's the only part I was like, that was so forced. Like you didn't have to tag that.
It's one of those things you think they think they're throwing it in for a fun fan service and wink to the audience, but your audience is going, oh.
Don't do that. Don't. And I like Topher Grace in this film, but I also felt like his twist at the end was that
the perfect example for me of done right was actually in The Predator, when they're escaping from the lab or whatever towards the very beginning, and there's a bunch of motorcycles down there, and they say, "Get to the choppers," and I'm like, that was perfect. It was kind of a wink to the audience.
That one works.
It was kind of a wink to that first movie, but it was still something novel and kind of funny about it, instead of just somebody else trying to do the line,
Whereas Brody, he's covered in mud, he's in front of the fire, and he's trying to egg the Predator on. He's literally verbatim going, "Do it, kill me now." It's like, dude, just don't do that. But that's like I said, the Topher Grace twist at the end, I don't think really works. Like it was too little, too late.
I mean, I kind of get how, because everyone there was known as like these killers, whether they're special forces or like in the case of Walton Goggins was like this criminal, it was like, oh, 5 o'clock, it's bit raping time. I'm sorry, it's still one of my favorite lines.
No, that was such a great, like, that's what Topher Grace is great at, is the deadpan, like, snark.
That was my favorite line of the movie. Which, I'm sorry, out of context, that sounds really bad, but watch the movie.
Horrible. But no, Walton Goggins is talking about when he gets back to Earth, he's gonna score a ton of cocaine and rape a bunch of bitches. And he's like, it's 5 p.m. Gotta go rape some bitches. And Topher Grace goes, yeah, 5 o'clock, bitch raping time. It's just like it's such a perfectly delivered. And then he goes to the rush. He's like,
It's totally done that Topher Grace voice that you could hear if you've ever seen him in anything, whether it's 70s show or whatever.
70s show or anything, yeah.
But so I kind of get like, he's like, why is he here? Because he's not a killer like the rest of these guys, and that's all leading up to the reveal of, yes, he is. He's kind of the creepiest of all. He's basically a serial killer. And so I get what they were going for there, but at the same time, I agree. You're kind of like, okay, this just feels like a twist thrown in at the end for the sake of being a twist thrown in at the end.
I don't think the twist is necessarily bad. I just think that it was done at the wrong time. I think he should have done it when the Russians saved him. And like when like he looks like he's about ready to get killed and the Russian comes in at the last second and saves his ass. I think that should have been the moment where he sticks him with the paralyzed knife to sacrifice the Russian to get away. Because we're like, what the hell? And then when he does it to Alice Braga's character, be like, okay, this guy really is messed up. Like, he wasn't doing it just to survive. He's doing it because he's...
Well, because I agree, because I think it would have been better if early on he had done something like that, so the audience, so we know who he really is, but nobody else does, and so you kind of there's kind of that thing of like, ooh, who's he going to turn on next? But instead, it's like he turns, does what he does to Alice, and then that's basically the end of his character.
And then at the last second, he's like, no, wait, help me, Adrian Brody. It's like, you were just standing over her with a knife. Like,
yeah, whereas if he'd done that earlier, then he could have been like, the audience knows, but nobody else does. It's kind of that extra feeling of tension.
I mean, that's the other part, too. It's just like, at that moment, like, they're trapped in the hole. It's like, why now are you choosing to do this?
Maybe it was 5 p.m.
Yeah, it was 5 p.m. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what he was actually going to do, but I don't know about you. That's probably not the right time to do that when literally the predators are fighting right above you. But nonetheless, Predators,
spoilers, by the way. Sorry,
it's an 11-year-old.
11 years old. Come on.
Yeah, Predators. To me is my second favorite. It's right behind Predator 1 as the best Predator film, with probably The Predator or Predator 2 being right after that. I haven't seen Predator 2 in so long, but I have a feeling The Predator is probably better than Predator 2. I think back to Predator 2, I'm like, there's some cringy-ass moments in that movie.
Predator 2 is actually not that bad. Predator 2 is just got that thing of like that kind of late 80s, early 90s sequels where it was basically kind of, let's do the same movie again and make some more money.
Yeah, I don't remember much of Predator 2 except for the end when they're like all the Predators.
It's not bad. It's just there's just nothing remarkable about it. It's just a sequel.
I remember Busey's death. in the movie. But yes, Predators, I think fantastic cast. Like I said, surprise Mahershala Ali. Like I said, we forgot he was in this movie and he pops up, we're like, what? Oh, wow. Was he bigger in this film? No, he's not.
No, this is before he was known. That's all.
Exactly. But yeah, this is definitely one that you guys probably should, if you guys have seen it and you were like, or you didn't watch it because maybe word of mouth, and you guys like the Aliens, Predators franchises, this is definitely something you guys should probably reconsider checking out. I think cast-wise and the story built around this, I think is incredibly well done. I wish we could have gotten more out of this because it does kind of end open-ended. We don't know how it ended based off of how the last scene is shot. I mean, I think we got a good idea of what probably ends up happening, but we don't know. But yeah, I definitely say this is definitely one worth checking out. Is it on any services?
It's on Hulu right now.
It is on Hulu. Yeah, I totally watched it on Hulu. I watch so many movies, I forget what streaming service I'm using on 90% of these things. But yes, it is totally on Hulu. Check that out. We're now going to our final pick. It is Brian's pick, and this one is a doozy. When Brian, I think was this like, it had to be like March or February when we were going over picking our movies, and we got to this week, and you're like, I want this film. I go, what the fuck is that? They're like, oh, it's a great movie. I'm like, I have never. Is this a real movie? I've never heard of this movie. No, I swear it's a real movie. It's got this person, this person, this person. It's like, I've never heard of this. This is probably really, really bad. And then I forgot about it. And then I remembered what's this week. I'm like, what the hell is this film? And Brian's like, oh, this is gonna be so great. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably gonna hate it. He goes, yeah, you're probably gonna hate it.
Yeah, I said you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There's gonna be no middle ground.
So this is a film. Let's put it this way. This is not on any streaming services. You can't find it anywhere.
It's not even been put on digital, so you can't even rent it or nothing.
You can buy the DVD or the Blu-ray, and that's it. So it was also a real pain to try to find to watch this film. But the movie that we are talking about to end the show is the 1990s comedy, I guess is what we want to call this. The Adventures of Ford Fairlane.
It's absolutely a comedy, yeah.
The Adventures of Ford Fairlane came out July 11th or 13th, depending on what website you go to. We're going to say 11th since it is technically the 9th through the 11th show.
This is where there's a problem. There was a bit of this is my fault. It came out on the 11th. We didn't realize when we picked it at the time, the 11th was a Wednesday. So the opening weekend was 13th to 15th, but it came out on the 11th, so we're still including it.
Yeah, so certain websites say that it came out on July 13th. Others say the 11th. But we had already watched the movie and picked it. And I was like, we're not picking another movie. We're just going to stick with this. But it had a budget of $20 million, had a weekend opening of $6.37 million. It was number 5 its opening weekend behind Die Hard 2 in its second week, Ghost in its first week, Days of Thunder in its third week, and the Jungle Book re-release in its first week, and had a finished box office of $21.4 million. Yeah, so this movie, I asked Brian, I was like, what the hell is this film? Before I got to watch it, I was like, so I know what the hell I'm walking into. And he goes, do you know who Andrew Dice Clay is? And I go, yeah. He goes, it's a movie starring him. And I'm like, great. So, Brian, take it away.
Yeah, so, I mean, even when this movie came out, Andrew Dice Clay obviously was like this, he became like this big, huge stand-up comedian in the late 80s. And mostly because he, did this offensive material and caused all kinds of controversy and stuff. I was not a huge fan of his stand-up comedy, but I wanted to see this movie anyway because, the trailers looked funny. It's actually directed by Rennie Harlan, who had the #1 movie that same weekend because he also directed Die Hard 2.
I was like, he had 2 movies come out the same week.
Yeah. So there was that. But it had this great supporting cast. The trailers look funny, and it's Joel Silver produced it. So I went and saw it, and actually I really just enjoyed this movie, and I've revisited it several times in the years since then, and I think I enjoy it more every time I watch it. This is a movie that I think I just laugh at beginning to end. Clearly, Sean did not feel the same. But yeah, this is the movie. Andrew Dice Clay had been in movies before and been in movies after this. All the way to Star is Born, yes, a role in. But this is the one where he played essentially his same character. He was the Dice Man as he does it. He wasn't just, he basically played that same character that he plays on stage in this movie, except here he's a rock and roll detective. He's basically a guy who lives in LA, and he's hired by a lot of people, usually in the industry, to, solve these crimes, things like this. He gets involved in this whole mystery of this missing girl, which leads to this whole plot about this conspiracy with these 3 missing discs that are going to expose this corruption in the music industry. But really, this is just a way for Ford Fairlane to make his way kind of through LA, meeting all these wacky characters and getting involved in all these dangerous hijinks. It's a very much a Joel Silver movie. It's an action comedy because there's plenty of explosions, there's plenty of gunfire, there's plenty of fights. You got a supporting cast. You have Lauren Holly, who you might know from Dumb and Dumber. She shows up as his, I guess, secretary assistant. Also, yeah, who kind of his girlfriend. You kind of get a feeling he uses her as a friends with benefits kind of thing.
He called her his girlfriend.
Appearances by everybody from Gilbert Gottfried to Robert Englund, who you don't get to see him outside of Freddy much. He gets to have a lot of fun in his role. Wayne Newton is kind of the main villain of the movie. Plenty of rock stars show up in this. Oh, Ed O'Neill. Ed O'Neill gets to show up as a cop, and he's kind of doing his usual Ed O'Neill thing, but he's pretty funny in that. Priscilla Presley, Morris Day. It's one of those things that has just a lot of people that are in one scene of the movie.
Art Mooney.
Yeah. So, I get why someone, Sean, would not enjoy this movie. I even told him you might hate this movie going in. But for me, I found it extremely funny. Maybe it's because, it was just the right time in my life that it was my kind of humor. I don't know, but I find it very funny. Even not loving Andrew Dice Clay's stand-up comedy and the character, the persona he created for that, I think it works in this movie. I think they did a great job of creating a movie around that character. Sean?
All right. So I am not a fan of Andrew Dice Clay. I don't think he's funny. I think he's annoying as hell. I think he's an R-rated Fonzie kind of character. Really, I think he's just a guy who grew up on Happy Days. Is I can do that, but R-rated, and that's basically what this character is. The best way I can describe this film and this is me being very lenient on the terms, is like an R-rated version of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective without.
Except 1,000 times
No,
funnier.
hold on.
Oh,
Let
God.
me finish.
Sorry.
It's an R-rated version of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, but he's a rock and roll detective, not a pet detective, and someone who's not nearly as talented as Jim Carrey. That's basically what this film is.
I agree with that entire description. I never thought of it. I could totally agree with the entire description, except for the more talented part. But
Really, you don't think Jim Carrey is more talented than Andrew Dice Clay?
I don't think Ace. Oh, you're talking about Jim Carrey or Ace Ventura?
I said Jim Carrey.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the character was more talented.
I said with Jim Carrey, who's way more talented than Andrew Dice Clay. I didn't say Ace Ventura.
I thought you were implying. You're talking about. You're describing the movie, and then you said more talented. Okay.
No, yes. I was like, are you out of your fucking mind?
I can totally see the rock and roll version of Ace Ventura. Yes.
But R-rated.
Yes, and very R-rated. Yes.
I will tell you one thing. One thing I loved about this movie was Robert Englund. Robert Englund is fantastic in this film. The first time I saw him, I was like, oh, I wish he was on screen more. Because Robert Englund is going so far in this. Like, he's just like, this is the first time I get to be something that's not Freddy Krueger. I'm going to fucking give you 110% on this character. And every time he was on screen, I fucking loved it.
Also, just a random aside, probably got in this movie because Rennie Harlin's first movie directed was Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Yeah.
So he already knew him, so that's why I brought him in for this movie.
Robert, if there's one reason to watch this film, it's Robert Englund's performance in it because it's fantastic. The first 10 minutes is god awful. It's so fucking bad. It's atrocious how bad these first 10 minutes are. And I even told Brian that, and he's like, "You hate fun." I was like, "Dude, it's bad." And you're like, "Okay, well, the first 10 minutes is pretty bad. It gets better after that." And I will admit, it does get better after those first 10 minutes. Here's the main deter that I have with the film is Andrew Dice Clay's narration. It's not needed. Like, he's a gumshoe. I get that. They always have a narration gumshoe. It's more or less, let's have Andrew Dice Clay give some of his stand-up in between scenes, and that kills the whole flow of the film. Because it's a wacky film. It's doing its kind of wacky kind of thing, which you can either shit on it or you can be on board with it. But when Andrew Dice Clay comes over with the narration and goes, oh, it's like this joke, oh, and it's like, oh, shut the fuck up. It's like just you're already playing the lead. You don't need this like stand-up comedy crap that none of the. I think there was one joke he says in narration that was actually funny, which was the box joke, and I'm not going to describe it any further. But that is the only joke that made me go, okay, that one's pretty good. But Lauren Holly, I think, is actually pretty great in the film for the role that she has put in. I would say by the end of this, and then the koala. I'm not gonna say what happens to the koala, but there's one moment when I was like, "What the hell?" And then I just started laughing at it because I was like, "It's so utterly ridiculous." I remember when this movie ended, I was like, "This movie is fucking crap." Like, I hated this film. We're, I think, 2 days removed from me watching this film, and it's more positive in my brain right now than it is negative. Because I'm looking back, it's like, okay, if you take Andrew Dice Clay's narration thing out of it, it's still not a good film, but it's not as bad. Especially when I took it, it's like, okay, think of it like Ace Ventura. Think of it like an R-rated Ace Ventura, and Jim Carrey's just going around doing wacky, crazy things. The characters around him aren't necessarily bright or anything, and he does weird, antic shit of crazy stuff that happens to him. Same thing with this. It's kind of the same kind of film, except without all the pets, except for a stuffed animatronic koala. But it's kind of the same thing. So it's like, it's hard for me to praise Ace Ventura and then completely shit on this film, which is kind of the same thing. I will say this, though. The cemetery scene was fantastic. The whole funeral, I love that whole scene. When he comes in and he's like, $300. He goes, what? The girls got $100. Well, that's because they did $300? Good. But Ed O'Neill though, oh god, I hated Ed O'Neill's performance in this. Every time they made him sing was bad.
Pretty time.
It made
Trust
me
the USA.
it made me feel so sad for Ed O'Neill because it's like they could have used you so much better.
That was just. I mean, because this is right in the prime of
Married with Children. Yeah,
and he was totally just basically being the same character, just as a cop.
I just felt like they could have utilized him way more than what they did. I think he has 3 scenes in the film, and I feel like he could have been used a lot better overall. It's not a good film. It's not. I'm not gonna say it's a good film, but it's definitely a film that I think might need to be watched at least once.
I honestly think if you decide you won't, but if down the line, a few years, if you decide to revisit it, I think you'll enjoy it more the second time. Like you said yourself, afterwards, you're going to think back on it and go, that's pretty funny. And because I think it's the kind of thing where you need to get past Andrew Dice Clay, because you need to know, you get used to him, because he's a very grating, brash character. That's kind of his whole thing. But I think that's why I think they did a good job of, in the movie, they're not trying to make him like a nice guy. He's supposed to be an asshole, and everybody in this movie hates him. And that's kind of the thing of it. But I think it's one of those movies that once you know what you're getting into, once you know what to expect from it, I think you'll enjoy it more, because he's always kind of the thing that everybody around him, all these crazy characters, are kind of bouncing.
I think the movie would jump up a full star if they removed his narrating in the film with his stand-up jokes, because that's the part that I'm just like, oh my god, shut up. The story itself, as bonkers as it is not the worst thing. It's just when he comes in and starts talking over it, which I say that it happens a lot. It happens maybe a handful of times in the film. It's not like he takes over the whole film with it, but it's just when he does do it, it's so cringy, except for that one joke. That
it's like you know what they're going for, because like you said, it's kind of a throwback to the old,
PI detective
detective movies where they do that narration kind of thing. And so I get what they were going for, but I agree it's unnecessary. Just kind of like I think the original kind of Blade Runner without the narration is better, because it doesn't have that narration. It's kind of the same kind of thing where it's like it's just unnecessary.
Yeah, it's totally unnecessary. And I feel like you've lucked out, because if we had shot this episode Monday night when we normally shoot, and I just watched this, I would have been ripping this film up and down on how much I hated it. But now that it is 2 days later, I'm actually as we were talking about the other movies, I'm thinking about what I'm gonna say about Ford Fairlane. I'm like, you know what?
And you remember those individual jokes, and you're thinking, hey, it's pretty funny.
And I'm just I can't really bash it, because there's the sorority house scene that's pretty funny. It's the funeral house is pretty funny. The koala scene is pretty funny, but there's still a lot of bad in this movie. There's a lot of bad in this film, but it's not as bad as I think it is.
Let me ask you, did it deserve the worst movie Razzie Award that it won?
I'd have to look at the rest of 1990 to really argue that statement.
The answer is no.
I'd have to look at the rest of 1990. I'm sure there's another film out there that might deserve it, but it's also one of those things where it didn't help itself. I will say this. Wayne Newton, not bad in the film. That dude cut himself in the film and kept acting. He pulled a Leo, because at the one point where he grabs the CD and bites into it, he's spitting blood. He's talking he's ripped his mouth up. And that's not. I don't think the director. Nothing against Rennie Harlan, but I don't think the director goes, "Oh, he'd be bleeding right now. You should put some blood packs in your mouth." No, I think he actually.
I mean, it could be. I don't know, but yeah.
He bit into that CD and cut his mouth, because he had blood coming out of his mouth, and I was like, "Oh, damn, we knew you really bit into that shit." Good on you for still going with that. Damn, but what was the main girl's name? Not Lauren Holly. Zuzu Petals.
Zuzu Petals.
Oh, God, she is fucking horrible in the film. Oh God, that is a horrible actress.
She's supposed to be an annoying little.
Yeah, I know she's supposed to be annoying, but she's pretty bad.
So I think she played the role great. But
let's put it this way, Brian.
Her second appearance on the show, because she was the little sister in Some Kind of Wonderful.
Oh my God, that was her.
Yep.
Okay. Now that you now I can see the faces and match them up. I think this is the best you're gonna get out of me for this film. I think you lucked out, because I was ready on Monday to rip the shit out of this film, and now I'm like, it's not that bad.
And now it's like that.
It's
And
not
that's the thing
good.
about the show is sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. You get two different opinions. I'm going to tell you, it's hilarious. You know, it's one of those movies I think you should not just go by its reputation. Watch it and decide for yourself. Sean's going to say the opposite. He didn't think it was that funny, but it's worth watching.
Brian gave this 4 out of 4.5 stars.
4.5.
I think I gave it a 2 or 2.5 star.
This is one of those movies I rate based on what it is. I'm not saying this is 4.5 stars. Like it's a half a star away from being as good as Schindler's List. I'm not saying it's a 4.5.
No, it's out of pure enjoyment. It's out of pure enjoyment.
Yeah, it's pure enjoyment. This is one of those movies that I just laugh my ass off, even when I watch it now, 30 years later, and I still find it hilarious, and I love it. So yes, I give it 4.
I mean, it's like us who have Can't Hardly Wait as 4.5 stars. Can't Hardly Wait is not one of the best films ever made, but we love them, kind of thing. But yeah, so Adventures of Ford Fairlane, like I said, it's not on any streaming services. It's not on digital. The only way to see it is on DVD or Blu-ray, which it's available on Amazon. You can go buy it.
For VHS, you find that.
I mean, if you can get it on Blu-ray, why would you buy it on VHS? You can also, not that I'm encouraging this, you can also find it on certain websites that ARG. You might be able to find it on there as well. But yeah, our rated Ace Ventura without the pets. That is basically The Adventures of Ford Fairlane with Andrew Dice Clay. That is our show, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekend Crusaders. If you did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we've got Black Widow comes out now. It's out now. So be out for the review for that. And then, of course, Fear Street Part 2, 1978 is out also, I think now, or it's coming out here in the next hour or two. So be on the lookout for the reviews for those. Also, we had 5 reviews done earlier this week. We also had, Brian and I had our Weekend Crusaders half-year episode. And then we also did our half-year review of 2021, the year so far. So check out those videos. Next week, we have 5 more movies that we are going to be discussing for the Weekend Crusaders. We've got a comedy film that I personally enjoy that Brian has never seen. So it's going to be a first for him because very rarely do I pick movies that Brian's never seen. Yeah. We've got a sequel to a franchise of one of my favorite films, not this movie. One of my favorite films of all time is the first film of a franchise. This is the last one of that franchise that we're going to have to watch. Wink, wink. We've got a Will Smith sci-fi adventure that I think Brian and I both thinks deserves a little more recognition than it probably doesn't get. We have another Will Smith action film that Brian and I love. We love this film so much, and we're so excited to talk about it. And then we've got a action-adventure swashbuckling film that I keep forgetting how much I love this movie. Oh, yeah. I love this film, and I always keep forgetting about it. So next week's a fun week. We have except for I'm gonna have to rewatch. I don't remember hating The Stinker. I think I liked it, but I think when we watch it now, I'm like, oh my god, this is so bad. But it's gonna be a good week next week. So we hope you guys stay tuned and check us out. I'm Sean Wasserkrug. That's Brian Michaels. We are the Weekend Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.